Okay, so welcome everybody to the Kentuckiana group. We are broadcasting live from full access. We're not quite sure how we're going to pull this all off, but we're trying to work it out, and we're going to see if we can save it for posterity and put it to our archive later. So here we go.
All right, so welcome everybody. This is my presentation. I am Glen Cates of RGC Data. My FileMaker experience, I've been developing a FileMaker for a little over 15 years, but my first introduction to FileMaker was farther back than that when I started playing around with FileMaker 7. And at the time, I actually took a class called Scriptology by Matt Petrowski and John Mark Osborne. I went to an in-person class in Boston, Massachusetts. A little bit of a caveat since I'm really focused on web integration now. Back then, I was a web developer. That was my primary employment, and the company that I was working for had a FileMaker division. And the head of the FileMaker division was constantly trying to recruit me. For some reason, he thought I would do well in FileMaker. So they had an open slot to go to this class. So last minute, they asked me if I wanted to go to this class, and I went. And I really did well at it. I kind of picked it up quickly. I was helping other people in the class. Like I was kind of the teacher's pet, if so to speak. Like I really took to it really quickly. But when I got back from that class, the head of the FileMaker division asked me, "So what do you think? You want to come over to FileMaker?" And I was like, "Nah, I think I'll stick with web development." Uh, Funny thing is, and really I had this impression that databases had to be the most boring thing in the world to work in, like dealing with data. Um, so I went on and ultimately my pathway kind of diverted me from websites to graphic design. Ended up 10 years later working for a company as a graphic designer. And they needed to have, they were doing everything on Excel spreadsheets. So the familiar story, man, we really need a database. And I just kind of said, well, I could I could probably do it. There's this thing called FileMaker. And so I jumped in, and before long, like my passion for FileMaker took over, and it became my primary focus, and kind of graphic design became secondary. And so I became a FileMaker developer after all. Funny thing is, all the years later, I went back to trying to get involved with a little web design, and I realized that everything that I had known about web design was obsolete. I used to develop in Perl and ASP and use Dreamweaver and things like that. And none of that was the same anymore. So it was kind of a retransitioning back into web development as part of this desire to integrate with FileMaker. So it's been quite a journey, and it's been a multi-year journey of trying to put all the pieces together to do web integration with FileMaker. So a little about me, I'm the senior developer for RGC Data. That's my consulting firm. So of course, if anybody wants to dabble in some of this stuff and finds themselves needing a little bit of help, we're happy to hire out or subcontract to help out. I'm also the host and facilitator of the Kentuckiana FileMaker Developers Group. Obviously, we're live streaming to the Kentuckiana group right now. So the group meets the fourth Tuesday of every month from 12:30 p.m. to 3 p.m. Eastern. If you are interested, and by all means, head on over to kyfmp.com to register and see when our next group is and all that stuff. And come join us in person and live. And I'm addressing this as much to the recording that will go on YouTube later. So if anybody's watching this on YouTube, please don't be afraid to come and join us in person and be a part of the conversation, because we welcome anybody with any level of FileMaker interest. As I said, all are welcome. So I am also on the volunteer committee for the Full Access Conference here in Los Altos, California. I was contacted by John Howell this spring when he decided to put this conference together. And part of my journey to for FileMaker integration and website came about 4 years ago when I stepped into the position of hosting and facilitating the Kentuckiana group. To be honest, our registration system and the website then was pretty antiquated. Registration pretty much just used a web direct interface for people to register to attend the group and things like that. So I volunteered to rebuild the website and build a registration system. And so I wanted to do real proper web integration. And that's, yes, Brian.
Was that your reason for this?
It wasn't the only reason, but it was a big primary part of the drive to learn how to do all this integration. I had some other projects that I needed to do as well, but it was a big part of it was the passion for the Kentuckiana group and wanting to do all that for the Kentuckiana group. So John has been a frequent attendee at the Kentuckiana group, and he'd kind of witnessed over the years the development, the integrations that I did for the Kentuckiana website and the registration system. And so he contacted me and he asked me if I wanted to be involved in developing the system for the full access group. So I came on board and I developed the FileMaker event management database and the registration system, and also did the website integration to pull all that in. And later on in the presentation, we'll kind of take a look at what FileMaker driven backend data is actually being displayed in the website and how we're doing that. I want to just kind of give recognition to Patrick Regan, who was instrumental in helping out with kind of a lot of the front end design aspect of the website while I was focused on the back end integration. He did a lot of work on the upkeep and fleshing out the front end design of the website. And then, of course, Dennis Burnham, who came along and did the mobile full access to go app. So many pieces of the puzzle to put on this conference, and everybody kind of did what was in their wheelhouse. So this presentation is about powering what we did to power the full access conference. To some degree, when I was putting this presentation together, you'll see that it focuses on a WordPress plugin called CWP Snippets that I developed. And CWP stands for Custom Web Publishing, our old school terminology that's been around for a long time. So if you were wondering what CWP stands for, that's what it stands for. But this whole thing was orchestrated and built on, and the whole foundation of it is that snippet plugin. So although I didn't want this presentation to become an advertisement for CWP Snippets, it really kind of has become the primary focus of the presentation because that's what has facilitated this this integration. So when we look at web integration, how do we get our data in and out of FileMaker? And so, as you probably all know, there's some really great products. The Claris Studio is the Claris offering to facilitate integration to get your data from FileMaker in and out of FileMaker onto the web. We also have FM Better Forms, I'm sure you're all familiar with, is an incredible product by those guys over there. ProofKit by Proofgeist. The guys at Proofgeist are really amazing geniuses over there, and they have put together a proof kit. If you've not heard about that, it's worth looking into to see how they've facilitated that. And then, I dare to put our snippet plugin. Maybe it doesn't fit in quite well with that big group of heavy hitters, but it really comes down to, I think we've come up with the right tool for the right job. And that's what it's always all about. With all these options, it's all about trying to figure out what's the right tool for my application. And so I think that we have an offering that presents another option, especially in the realm of WordPress, because as far as I know, the others, there's not a focus for WordPress with the other offerings. I'm sure that there are ways that you can utilize them in WordPress, but it's not a focus. In our case, our focus is primarily WordPress. So it's just another offering in the tools that are out there and available. So why are we talking about WordPress? Well, WordPress powers 43% of all websites. So that's a pretty big market share. There's a lot of people using WordPress out there. 60% of the content management systems are WordPress. of the competition for WordPress in the content management system realm, Shopify, Wix, Squarespace, as you can say, they're all under 10%. So WordPress is really holding a big share of the market out there. And of course, our primary clients are usually small to medium businesses, or at least that's been my experience. And with those, WordPress is even more of a market share. But the bottom line is it came about because I had projects to do, and my experience came from the clients that I was working with had WordPress websites. You know, it's a great thing, even in FileMaker, to be able to develop a system from scratch and plan out all of the platforms and how you're going to put it all together. But we'll know that's not always experience. If you've ever hired on to work on a FileMaker system that somebody else built, you know, all of those choices were already made for us. It's the same thing with, you know, many companies already have a website that exists. It's already built on WordPress, and that was my experience. So that's what led me down the journey to do my integrations with WordPress, is that's what I had to do. That's what it's been a year. Through all that, it all started out trying to find the tools that were available in WordPress, and all kind of there were downsides to them, and they didn't work all that well. There was a lot more overhead to being able to set up, being able to do that integration. So eventually, I just got to the point where I had the idea that I was going to build a plugin that was going to help to facilitate integrating with FileMaker. And so CWP Snippets is the name of our plugin. It is a WordPress plugin, not to be confused with a FileMaker plugin. And so what is CWP Snippets? Well, at its core, CWP Snippets is a snippet plugin. So if you're familiar at all with developing in WordPress, there are plugins that are snippet plugins that allow you to inject custom code into your pages in a website. And there are a couple of big names out there in the snippet realm. And when I started doing my integrations, that's what I used to be able to write the custom code to connect to FileMaker was other snippet plugins. So what I decided to do was build this plugin to be a snippet plugin, but with the extra added benefit of having the built-in components for FileMaker. So as far as the snippet plugin, it stores and manages custom PHP, JavaScript, HTML, and CSS code snippets. Provides a code editing environment right within your WordPress website so that you can actually write your code within there. It has syntax highlighting and history. We've also built in some very robust, we put a lot of effort into building in robust error handling. One of the dangers of snippet plugins is that you can put some bad code in there and you could potentially crash your website. Well, we've gone to great lengths to try and prevent things like that from happening. So for instance, if you put some PHP code in a snippet that ends up causing a critical error that would normally take down your website, our plugin captures that error, deactivates the snippet, reports the error to you, and allows you to go and make that fix without your website ever going down. So we put a lot of effort into error handling into the plugin. So it allows you to easily inject custom code into posts, pages, and widgets with shortcodes. And you can also create global functions, scripts, and styles that are applied site-wide, but that is a feature of the Pro version. So if you license the Pro version, then you have the ability to do global functions and scripts. So what are the FileMaker components? The first and foremost is, or not foremost, but at least first, we've had to have some way to store the credentials. So the last thing you want to do is be putting your username and password directly hard-coded into the PHP code. On other full stack sites and other websites, the recommendation would often be to use environmental variables. And that's something that is a little bit more difficult when you're dealing with a shared hosting environment and a WordPress website. It's a little bit harder to access those environmental variables, but WordPress has a great system built in to be able to store those credentials into WordPress settings. And so that's what we've done is provided the ability to load your credentials into WordPress. One of the things that it does is handles token management and connection lifecycle. So when dealing with the Data API and making a connection to FileMaker, what you do is you make the call to FileMaker, and the FileMaker server passes back a token. And the way I think of it is that when you make that call to FileMaker, it opens up a session on the server. And loosely speaking, it's like the server is opening up an instance of the FileMaker client. And so once it opens up, then you tell it what layout to go to and what action to perform, and it returns data. All that happens. But then on your next call, if you reuse the token, then you're able to use that same open session. And so you don't have to reopen the database again, so to speak. And there is an overhead to establishing that first connection. So what the token does is it gives you access to that session once it's open. It has a 15-minute time limit, but every time you access using that token, it resets the clock. So you can basically work with that open connection and continuously keep that connection open as long as you're active within that 15-minute window. And so that's very important. One of the things that you would see if you're doing this integration and you're not using a token, because theoretically you could just open a new session every time you call FileMaker. But then if you look in your admin console on the server, you'll see a session being opened every single time. It definitely has an overhead as far as like the first call to FileMaker has just that fraction of a second maybe, or a second or two to make that connection. But then subsequent calls are much quicker because the connection is already open. If you are establishing a new connection each time, you're basically having to have that overhead every time you reach out. So we've built that all into the plugin. That's all handled for you. So you don't even have to think about that. It comes with an object-based PHP library that's basically like a collection of functions that handle all of the CRUD actions, the calls to create, delete, edit, records, things like that. So that's all built in as well. If you have ever worked with integrations before, most people will have run across this type of thing because there's many libraries out there and available. The FileMaker community is very generous in providing that. I'd like to kind of special recognition to 24U. I ended up using FM Restore for quite a bit of my journey through working out all this integration. And if you've ever used FM Restore and then you use our plugin, you'll see that there's a lot of similarities because I wanted the plugin to be able to easily be able to convert stuff that I'd already worked with that used FM Restore to be able to convert it over to our plugin and not have to make a lot of changes. So, but what we did is we added in a lot of FileMaker specific security practices, just standards that FileMaker or that WordPress insists on to make it more compatible and run more in harmony with WordPress and the WordPress environment. The plugin comes with a separate demo setup and database. One of the things that I really wanted to do with this plugin was to make it a learning tool. So I wanted it to be very easy for somebody to kind of, if they were going down the path that I went through, I didn't want them to deal with the struggles that I dealt with. So when I was learning how to do integration with the Data API, there was not a lot of information out there, especially when it came to WordPress. A lot of the tutorial videos on YouTube and things like that were presented from full stack web developers who made a lot of assumptions about, using stuff like Composer and other app, and they kind of glossed right over them, and it was like they assumed you already knew. And I'm like, I don't even know what that is. How am I supposed to, So there was all these pieces of the puzzle that it took me a long time to be able to find the sources to get those pieces and put them all together. So I wanted this to be a pathway that somebody could start using right away and basically be able to pull data out of a FileMaker database quickly and easily and not have to go through those struggles that I went through. So it's very much a learning tool. So it comes with a library of template snippets that perform all of the common tasks. So you basically have template code ready to just copy and paste in place to be able to pull that data out. And then we have a set of sample snippets that just demonstrate how to take that data and format it and style it into actually working pages. So it's kind of a roadmap. For me, that was much more important a few years ago. Today we have AI, so it's not, we have a whole nother resource to be able to do that, but I included it in the plugin because I would have really greatly appreciated having some kind of sample that showed me how to put this stuff into place. So what we're going to do is we're going to demonstrate how to install the plugin. What I'm going to do is set up a local environment. And this was another piece of the puzzle when I was learning how to do this stuff was how can I do this on my local machine without having to have a hosted website and work on a live website. So the gold standard for many years for setting up a server on your local machine is XAMPP. And it's pretty easy to set up, and you can easily put a WordPress website on your local machine, but it's a little beyond the extent of this presentation. So if you did want to use XAMPP, I would recommend just search YouTube, and there's plenty of videos on how to do that out there. But I converted a little while back to local by WordPress Engine, which is specifically designed to create a WordPress website on your local machine and set up that environment for you. So I'm going to go ahead right now and demonstrate setting up that local environment. This is another part that's going to be a little tricky for me, is working on a laptop and on a single screen. So from my perspective anyway. So again, I'll ask you to just bear with me. So this is local. I've already downloaded and installed it, obviously. And it's a quick installation. You just click right through and everything's just up and running. And then when you open it up, you just come down here to add a website, create a new website, give it a name. Just need to set up my username and password for the admin panel. And then add site. And that's all there is to it. It's just going to take a minute or so for it to spin up the website, but it's as easy as that. And it's really nice because it allows you to do multiple sites on your local machine. The Jeopardy music. Do, 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 do.
So is WordPress a purchased product?
No, WordPress is free. And what the cost with WordPress comes from, really, you're just paying for the hosting. But any host, any web server anywhere, especially all of the mainstream, if you want to just get shared hosting for $100 a year or something like that, they all come pre-installed with WordPress. So WordPress is completely free, open source, community driven. So you can So yeah, you can install WordPress. There's no cost involved with the WordPress itself. It's just the cost of hosting your website wherever you're going to host it. So, wouldn't you know, this is taking a lot longer than it did in my run-throughs. Wonder if our internet connection is slowing down a little bit.
You think it's also more optimized for like Windows, or is it like a?
Not necessarily. It works as well on Windows or Mac. And I actually meant to kind of address that. As you can see, I'm a little bit of a nonconformist. I'm a Windows person, and I will fully concede that Mac is superior. I'm not even going to argue the point, but I've just worked with Windows for so many years that I've never been able to kind of take the time to make the transition to get comfortable working in Mac. So no platform shaming, please. I had an experience not too long ago in the Kentuckiana group where somebody really let into me about being on Windows. And I'm like, platform shaming, why don't you? So the other thing that you may have noticed is, and I've definitely have noticed being at some of the other presentations, I think I'm the only one that did not use the official full access template for my presentation. Well, I don't know. I guess I'm a bit of a rebel. So, all right. So we got it loaded. And that's all it takes. So what was that, 2 or 3 minutes to just spin up a fully functional kind of bare bones WordPress website on your local computer. So, okay, let me see if I can resume my slideshow without screwing that up. Nope, wrong line. Display settings, swap. Okay. So the next step is going to be to download and install the plugin. So for that, we'll be going to CWPSnippets.com. Our primary company website is RGCData.com, but we do have a separate website for the snippet plugin, and we can currently go and download it from there. I did want to mention we are in the process of trying to get the plugin submitted and approved to the WordPress repository. So hopefully before long, for those of you who are familiar with WordPress, you know you can just go to new plugins and do a search in the repository. Currently, if you search for FileMaker, there are only 2 plugins that come up, and all they are offering is a way to connect your form, like your contact form, through some of the other form plugins. These plugins just are offering, okay, you can take the data and you can send it to FileMaker. So we're really hoping to get into the repository so that we can kind of get in front of lots of people. And I'm sure there's been some frustration from FileMaker developers out there who have gone and searched and seen that there was nothing available to them. So hopefully we can fill that void. So we're going to go download and install the plugin. So this is the CWP Snippets website, and you can see features and pricing for the pro version and all that good stuff. But currently, in order to get the plugin, you just go to download, and we are collecting a little information so we can kind of know how many downloads we're getting in from who. When you submit, the download link will be emailed to you. I've already got it on my computer, so rather than kind of going through that whole process, I'm going to skip it. I'm sure it's not rocket science for anybody to go and do that. So once we get the plugin, I'm going over to plugins. I feel like this mic is just, anytime I step back, I drift out of the sound zone. So, okay. So we go to plugins, we go add new plugin. And I'm going to upload the plugin, choose file. And for me, I'm just going to go to my plugins folder, grab the latest version, and install the plugin. So once you've installed it, activate, and there we go. We have our plugin. And so this is the plugin installed. Then we have the next steps. So once we've downloaded and installed the plugin, the next thing to do is set up the demo database and the connection to your server. Now, I hadn't mentioned it until now, but you can set up the website locally, but you do have to have a FileMaker server, and your database does have to be hosted in order to be able to use the Data API. So, we're going to go to demo setup, and we're going to follow these instructions. I don't think we need to go through all of the instructions line by line. So we'll just demonstrate instead. So what you see here is we've got settings, and settings is for your live production database and server. So what we've done is we've given you the ability to actually point to two separate servers and two different databases so that you can actually have a live environment, and then you can have a demo environment where you can play around in a sandbox. So we provided that capability for you. Let's see, did it not go? So this is where you would put in your live production credentials and information. But if we go to demo setup, we can see right here, we've got a demo database available that we can just click and download. And the demo database is essentially just built from the included Claris contacts database. So if you just are creating a new database in Claris and FileMaker, and you select a template, the contacts template that is available, a little bit of modification, but not a whole lot. It didn't take a whole lot of modification to make that available. So the couple things that you're going to have to make sure of in order to make the connection is on your FileMaker server, under connections, you have to go to the Data API and make sure the Data API is turned on your server. And then you also have to have a privilege set in your database that allows the Data API. And if we can get this stuff to open up. Oh, sorry, I wanted to. The credentials for the demo database are all right here. So to begin with, we're going to start with our admin username and password to get into the database to start with. And that is just admin 123. Give us full access permissions. And so under manage security, we have a separate user, and that's another recommendation. You should set up a separate user for your API connections, your data API connections. Also, it's highly recommended, although we're not doing it in this demonstration, to set up separate layouts for your data API. The data API returns whatever fields are on the layout, the data that's being displayed on the layout you're referencing. So one of the things, you don't want to use production layouts because you might have a lot more information there than you need in your web page. And you may even have some information there that you don't want to expose to the world. So you want to kind of manage that by creating specific layouts for your data API access. So if we look right here under the extended privileges, we have to make sure access via FileMaker Data API is selected. And then what we would do is just upload to host. And I'm sure that for many of you, this is like, yeah, we all know how to upload a database to the host, but I'm trying to kind of connect to a broad audience and trying to keep in mind, like I described before, not to assume somebody already knows something. That way, if somebody's out there going, wait a minute, I don't know how to upload to a host, then we're kind of getting it covered. I already do have it uploaded, so we don't really have to go through the process of uploading it to the host. But I'm going to go ahead and open it from the host. Show host. This is my development server. Oops. Okay, so now we have the development server or the database set up. We've uploaded it to a host. I need to put the host name in here. For me, my development host is dev.rgcdata.com, database name, CWP Snippets, the default layout, contact details, and then for our credentials, we go over here to the username and password for the API, which is just API and API 123. So, and once we put all that in and we hit submit, it instantly tells you whether you've made a successful connection. So right then and there, we now have connected to that database on our FileMaker server. So we have a live connection. We're connected. Once we make that connection, we set up the demo database and make the connection, then we can go over to our snippets and we can start exploring our templates and take a look at how they work. So we go over to here to templates. And there's a list of all the templates that we have to be able to create records, delete, duplicate, all of the common functionality that we need. And I'm going to select Find Records. And I'm actually going to go into edit mode just so we can take a look at the coding environment. So this is what the code looks like in the coding environment. And it's got syntax highlighting. You can do a mixture of HTML, JavaScript, PHP, all within this environment. And you get syntax highlighting that matches your language. So it's all very nice. So for the demo, we append underscore demo to our connection criteria up here. When you go to connect and use these for your live production site, you would just make sure to remove the underscore demo. And that will point to the production server instead of the demo server. And then we have a preview capability. So from here, I can go ahead and just hit preview. And this is going to open up in a page. The preview function is only usable by a WordPress admin that is logged in. So this is not the method that you would use to display your data. You would use shortcodes to do that, and we can take a look at that in a little bit. But this is your working environment when you want to preview what you're doing. Click preview, and here we go. So it has loaded a page within the WordPress template for that theme. It's connected to the demo database, and it has pulled our data. So here we go. This is all the data that's coming directly out of the FileMaker database. And what it does is it returns it and it formats into a PHP array. For those like me, when I started working with this stuff, I was not familiar with arrays and didn't really know how to make heads or tails out of it. But hopefully it's recognizable to the extent that PHP arrays work almost identically to JSON. If you know how to, pull data out of JSON and drill down and pull out JSON elements, then you can work with PHP arrays. So that's it. And that's, to this extent, we have just within a matter of minutes, we've set up a database on a FileMaker server, and we've established a connection, and we are pulling live data from a FileMaker server that quickly. So that's kind of the starting point. Once you get this far, then you've got a playground to play with. And for me, that was where these demos are really nice, because they actually display the data, and then you can start to look at what you want to do with that data. So I'm going to go ahead and get back to our presentation. Okay. So the good news is we've done all the hard work for you to facilitate that connection to FileMaker. It provides all the complicated coding and all that stuff for web integration. One of the benefits of that is the fact that it provides an environment where your entire integration can live within that plugin. So one of the things that I've run into as my experience is that I've been tasked to do a web integration with an existing WordPress website. I didn't build it. I don't manage it. I'm not the webmaster. So if I go in there and start adding code, and without using this plugin, the way that the integration might be done is to have to actually write code into the theme PHP file or into the theme CSS files and things like that. And then that webmaster can come along later on and run an update or make some changes and completely obliterate your work. So this kind of gives a place where you can say, okay, this is where all this integration stuff takes place. So tell the other webmaster, just don't touch anything in there and we'll be fine. So that's just another one of the benefits. You don't have to worry about stuff like setting up a child theme or protecting your work. So that's the good news. The bad news is CWP Snippets provides the custom web publishing environment, but you're still responsible for the custom coding. So as much as I would have loved to have built a plugin where you could just go pick and choose fields and kind of build what you want, like a WYSIWYG kind of configuration, we all know that developing in FileMaker, we all develop differently. Every FileMaker solution is completely differently constructed with different tables and fields and layouts. And so trying to build something like that gives you the flexibility. In the past, I think years ago, I think I saw a WordPress plugin that somebody put out And that was kind of the way it was geared. But then the look and feel of what you got back was kind of like, that's what you get. And our needs and our use cases are so widely varied that the ability to actually customize what you're doing, what you're getting back for data and what you're doing with it is just really prohibitive when it comes to kind of providing that type of thing. But back to the good news, we now have AI. And so what I'm going to do right now is I am going to demonstrate what we can do with AI that makes this so much easier. If I can get that toolbar out of my way, just do it this way. So, wait. Anyway, oh, there we go. That'll help. Get that out of the way. Yes.
Hey, Ron?
Yeah.
Could you show how it comes up with the list view and then you can click it to go to the view? Because that might make other people kind of see the benefit or where you're going there.
Yeah, that's where we're getting. Yeah. So essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the pathway that I use to generate those sample snippets that pull the data and format it. So currently I enjoy using Gemini because I think Gemini kisses my butt more than any of the AIs. And I found that important, makes me feel good. No, there are other reasons, but I've done very well with Gemini. So we're going to use Gemini. Rather than try and construct the prompt and build everything live right here, which I'm sure I would fumble all over, I've actually created a prompt already so that we can just copy it and paste it into Gemini. So as you can see, I'm telling Gemini I'm working with a plugin that does snippets, and I'm feeding it the template code for the find records. So which one I'm using? Yeah, get records. So I took the template, I opened up the template snippet, copied the code, pasted it right into the prompt. And then I also took the return data that we were looking at, the PHP array that was returned by the snippet. And I also plugged that in so I could feed that. So I'm telling AI, here's where the script that I'm starting with. Here's the data that's being returned by the FileMaker database. And then I'm giving it instructions saying, I'd like to create a page that displays a list of contacts. And I'm telling it what, let me get past all this data here. Scroll. Probably should have put all that at the top. And it's telling it what columns that I'd like to have in the table, and just some of the other specifics that I would like to have put into place. And I'm constructing a prompt that I'm just going to go over here to Gemini and plug it in place. And I'm going to cross my fingers on this because I've tried it about 5 or 6 times and it only failed once. So I'm hoping that it's going to have a good result the first time out of the gate. But if it doesn't, we could probably just run it again and it'll probably be fine the next time. All right, so while that's churning, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and I'm going to get I got to go to get records. I'm going to set up my snippet. I would go over to get records. There it is. Just going to copy it. I'm going to switch back over to snippets. So snippets are going to be your live production snippets. Templates and samples are the ones that are geared towards pointing to the demo setup. I'm going to add a new snippet. Paste in my code, which I don't necessarily need to do because AI is going to give it to me anyway, but just for the sake of having it set up and ready to go, it's a snippet. And then, well, yeah, I've got to give it a name. Create the snippet. So one of the nice things about the snippet plugin in the realm of snippet plugins is that our snippets actually have the ability to add in separate CSS as a separate code block. So you can actually style your returned data, your returned HTML, you can style it instead of having to put in inline CSS or having to go to the theme CSS file. You can just put it right along with the snippet and it'll load and style your page. And as part of my prompt, I asked Gemini to give me both the scripting, the PHP HTML, and also give me the accompanying CSS. So here's my script. And go back to edit. Place. Flip over to our CSS block. Grab our CSS. Same place. All right, and here's the moment of truth. We're going to hit the preview button and we're going to see what happens. And there we go. We have a fully formatted page. So it's even, in the prompt, I had asked it to include pagination. So it's actually even set up to be able to scroll through, 1 through 10, 20, 11 through 20, so on and so forth. It's got buttons set up for preview and delete, or for view details and delete, but I don't know if the delete button is already functional. No, doesn't look like it's quite functional. So the pathway to building these kind of pages is this: the way I start. I get this starting point, and then I go back to AI and I say, okay, now that we have everything in place, now let's work on the functionality for the delete button. Let's work on the link for the details, and then I'd go and work on the detail page. And so kind of build it incrementally. You just keep adding, asking AI to expand on what you're working on. So, and what the question was earlier had to do with the fact that you'll see, I'm going to come over to our sample snippets. And starting with the contact list, as you can see, it looks very similar because this is the process that I used in order to develop our sample snippets. But this one is actually fully connected and all of the functionality is in place. Here's the details page where you can see the details. And then we can edit. We can edit our data, and let's see if we can set up and show the data being edited live. Tell you what, I'm going to go back to the list and choose my record. Cancel. Back to list. Back to the first page. Oh no, there I am. Okay, so I'm going to go to the record that I'm viewing. So on this page, we're pulling in the image right out of the FileMaker container. We can actually choose to upload another image. It looks like my Starlink connection is really slowed down. So I'm not sure what's going on with that. We'll see how things work out with that. So, I mean, if I just come in here and edit a little bit of data, oops. And we even have the ability to do related records. So the email and phone, those are related records. So I can just add another email. I can add additional phone numbers. I could even add additional addresses. And then when I hit save contact, it shows my additions here. And then if I go over to the FileMaker database and I look over to email, for instance, there's the additional email that I just added. There's the one appended to my name. So I'm actively editing records and interacting with records live from the FileMaker database. Yay, yeah. And the crowd goes wild.
It really is done.
Okay, and our delete functionality is working here too.
You made that look easy.
Why, thank you. It's kind of funny, the work that I've been doing, especially this last year. I've been really heavily utilizing, record missing. Okay, I'm not gonna pay no attention to that. We'll look into that later. Yeah,
Demo time.
yeah, we all know how demos go. Okay, let me see, get back to my place in the presentation. Oh, I ended up at the beginning again. I hate it when that happens. Sorry about that.
Ron, you'll take a look. It looks like there's speaker notes on the main screen.
Looks like what?
Keep your head around there and look at the screen. You're nearing the.
Oh, great.
I think Zoom's coming up. How's Zoom just stop?
Let me try it again here. Because that's a little So what are you seeing over there now?
Now it's fine here, but it's the opposite on Zoom.
Okay. So duplicate slideshow is what I needed to press. So now we should have it in the right place.
Oh, now it's good.
Yeah, except now I got to go find my place again. Fun. And then duplicate. Okay. Oh, it went back to the beginning. I'm basically just going to abandon my slideshow at this point because what it comes down to is I'm going to show you some examples of the plugin in use. As I mentioned, all of this came about in my efforts to redesign and redevelop the Kentuckiana user group website. So here's the Kentuckiana user group website. As you can see, we're showing the next event, which is today. Our presenters, we have a sidebar with stuff like agenda, upcoming events. We have a list of the people attending. If we go to archives, we have a video archive and with pagination. So we've got lots of videos that are actually hosted on YouTube, but we have the ability to pull them right in here. It's searchable. So this is a fully functioning search that if I do a search for me, I might have to do Ron Glen Cates. Oh, there it is. So I can pull up right from the archive. Got a little bit on our about page and a contact form. And we also have my account, which is a user portal for logging in and managing your own account. So what I wanted to demonstrate is if I go to WordPress admin and log in. Uh-oh, wrong one. Right. So if I go over to plugins and I deactivate CWP Snippets, and when we go back to the website, this is what the homepage looks like without the FileMaker data. So what you see here is all the short codes that are pulling in the snippets that feed that FileMaker data. So everything that you saw in those places was being live fed from the FileMaker backend. This one needs to be, refresh, and it's all gone. It's holding onto the cache apparently. And that's something we'll talk about in a minute because caching is kind of one of the caveats that we need to be aware of. So I'm going to reactivate the snippet plugin, go back to the home page, and we'll see all the data filled back in. So that's a real world use case where we're actively using FileMaker backend to feed a WordPress website. So the other example, of course, that we have is the full access website. And I could do pretty much the same thing. I could go in and I could turn off the plugin and I could show all the places that the FileMaker data is being pulled in, the attending and all of that stuff. But one of the things I'm showing here is kind of a contrast between the free plugin. It's on this website, on the Kentuckiana website, I'm using the plugin as if I have not registered or purchased the pro version. So everything that you saw happening in the Kentuckiana website is free. If you want to download the plugin and use it, you can do all of that stuff without having to pay the pro version. Now, honestly, you know, it starts at about $100 a year per site. So we're not asking a lot. But what it does provide, if you have the pro version, is the ability to do things like functions and scripts and styles. And being able to do those, that's where a whole lot of power gets added to what we're able to do. So some of the stuff that we've been able to do with the full access website with the pro version is we can actually create endpoints. We can do webhooks. We can, you know, extend the connectivity. For example, have any of you played around with your QR codes on your name badges? Okay, nobody. So we have a vCard QR code. If you scan that vCard, what's happening is the URL that's embedded in the QR code is reaching out to an endpoint that is put into the CWP Snippets plugin. That endpoint runs a script that reaches out to the FileMaker database, and that vCard file is stored in a FileMaker container. And it pulls the file from the container and delivers it back to you, and that instantly triggers the ability to add it to your contacts on your phone. So, you know, we've created that that connection that way. One of the other things that we've done is, if you've looked at the To-Go app, the mobile app that Dennis Burnham built, throughout the website, we have the ability to select favorites so that you can kind of tailor your schedule. To extend that capability to the To-Go app, what we did is, again, we set up an endpoint. So if you click on a favorite in the To-Go app, it is using the insert from URL to reach out to an endpoint that's built in the snippet plugin that then sends that data back to the main database, the EMS, that manages all the main data for the event. So we also have the ability to profile pictures, for instance, are uploaded to our web server. And basically the way that happens is, if you go into your profile and you change your profile picture, the profile picture is then sent to the database, dropped into a container, and then a subsequent script turns around and grabs that and uploads it back to the website so that we can serve it with a regular URL. And that brings up something else that I'm going to go into. Again, I'm kind of leery to try and get back to my slides because they weren't working that great. Actually, I closed it. So
Okay.
yeah, we'll see if we can work with them because there's some important information there. So let's get
If
back.
it has that double screen, I would ignore it.
Let's see. This is where I wanted to see if we can start from there, or if I'm going to have to run through the whole thing again. Oh, good. You guys see it okay on the front end?
Yep.
Okay, so we went through the examples of the Kentuckiana website and the full access website. And then what I wanted to talk about is some particular challenges when it comes to working with the Data API, and in particular in WordPress. And these are things that I kind of went through a whole lot of hair-pulling frustration with. Caching. So in a WordPress environment, normally you're using the WordPress backend database, and your plugins and your data is kind of managed all within that environment. And it's also at the same time managing your page caching. But it kind of knows when new data has been put into the WordPress database. There are ways that it can know whether it needs to flush the cache or give you a new page. When we're working with a FileMaker database, the WordPress environment doesn't know that we've made updates to the data in the FileMaker database. So if the page is being cached, you may find that you're running your script and you're updating the records in the database, but it's just not showing in the website, and that could be really frustrating. So there are several things that we can do to kind of manage that, things to consider. If you have pages that the data does not change very often, then that's a good thing that it's being cached. Because one of the things that we want to try to do is really minimize our calls to the FileMaker database. So far, this conference is kind of a good test bed for seeing what happens when we've got a large group of people hitting the website and the database at the same time. So far, I haven't had any complaints from the website end of things as far as being able to pull the data through. Nobody said, hey, it's not coming through or anything. So we're doing pretty good so far. But it's still something worth considering. You know, if we can reduce the calls to the FileMaker database, we can increase efficiency and put less strain on the FileMaker database. Because let's face it, after all, FileMaker is not designed to be the back end of a website. That's not what its purpose is. So, you know, so we should consider that. So we reduce database calls. One of the ways that we can manage the caching is we can kind of build in, first of all, we want to kind of avoid, is that on the next? Yeah. Beware of caching plugins. So WordPress, you may see most WordPress websites will have, some of them on certain hosts will have pre-installed things like Lightspeed caching or something like that. You really want to either deactivate those or you want to learn and understand how to use them so you can tell them which pages not to cache. When you do that, then we start to consider, well, if we're not caching the page, that means now every time we refresh the page, we're actually hitting the database. Well, there are techniques for taking that data that's being returned and storing it in what's called a transient. So think of a transient as like a field in our database that has a time limit. So we've populated that, we've reached out to FileMaker, we've grabbed all the data, that PHP array of data, then we've dropped it into a field into the WordPress database. And maybe we put a 15-minute time limit on it. The next time that page loads, even from cache, it's going to look to pull the data from that transient. Well, after 15 minutes, that field is empty. And now it knows that it has to go and fetch the data again from FileMaker. So there are techniques that are helpful to learn to be able to manage the caching in different ways. So that's one of the concerns and one of the things that it's very helpful to kind of dig into a little deeper and learn to understand, because those are some of the frustrations that I ran into in my journey. Why is it not showing? I changed, you know. Some of the other things that are, one of the other big things that's a challenge is pulling files from a container field. So when you reach out to a FileMaker database and you pull that PHP array of data from FileMaker, what it gives back for the container field is a URL that points back to that container field. But it's a secure URL. And right out of the box from a FileMaker server, you'll find that it's impossible to display an image in a web page. It just won't show because that URL has got, and Clay, you may even be able to kind of explain it better than I can. It's a secure URL that's apparently good for one session, for one person, one time. And essentially what's happening is the PHP is pulling that URL and has access to that image. But then when you put it into the HTML, the PHP is server side. And so from there, it has access. But when it's rendering the HTML, that's happening client side. And the client side does not have access to that image. So therefore, you get a dead link. And that was something that took me forever to find somebody that could tell me what was going on. First of all, the first option is there's a feature in FileMaker Server. You can change that URL to what's referred to as a persistent URL. So it loosens those security constraints. the thing to keep in mind is that it's a server setting. So if you have other databases on that server and you're concerned about your files and the containers and the security, that's something to consider. But when you set, and it's not available in the server admin console, so you actually have to use a command line to run that command to turn that option on or change that option. And one thing, let's see, well, I don't want to flip back and forth, but I will show you momentarily. The plugin does come with built-in documentation. And one of the things that is well documented in that documentation is how to flip that switch. So it gives you instructions on changing that setting. Once you do turn on persistent URLs or change that setting to get persistent URLs, it is important to realize it's still a limited URL. There's still a time limit involved. So if you get that URL and you cache that page, you may go back a week later and that URL no longer works. And it was kind of funny because I asked AI, what was the time limit? How long is that URL set to last? And what AI told me is that Claris reserved the right not to specify a time limit. Apparently so that they could change it whenever they want to. So I don't know how long those URLs last. So suffice it to say, as far as I can tell, it is several days or a week or something like that. So suffice it to say, you need to kind of make sure that you're not counting on it to be available forever, where you have to adjust and get a new URL. One of the tried and true or kind of bulletproof solutions to that is just converting your images to base 64 in your database. And then it gets returned to the website as base 64. And in PHP or HTML, you can just switch it back and re-encode it on the front end. So yeah.
What's the size limit on base 64 encoding?
I have not explored that, so I don't know. Sorry, I can't answer that question. I mean, I've worked with some pretty large files, so it's something we'll have to do some research on and find
I
out.
think it gives up to how much text you can handle in your API at that.
Yeah.
There's some proxies and things like that will chop down, if HTTP requests like over 3 gigabytes or something like that. So,
Yeah. So, yeah. Sorry, I don't have the answer for that one. So, and then the other option is what I kind of described earlier, was the fact that you could actually upload your container data up to a web host, which coincidentally we can do with our snippet plugin. And I'll talk about that in just a minute because that's part of one of the next slides.
Can that transient thing hold the images also, or is that just text?
Yeah.
Okay, so you
Yeah.
can stick it in there too.
Yeah, that is another option. You can actually use that URL to return the actual image and then store the image on the server side. That's one that we haven't explored, so I really can't give you any experience with that. But yeah, that should be an option as well. So let's see. So what's next for CWP snippets? One of the things that we're working on, and that was why I wanted to wait till this slide to talk about it, is we are working on a library of pre-written snippets that you can search and find. We've been exploring all of this different stuff, that we've been doing some amazing things with the snippets, and we're like, we want to make that available to people. So we're going to have a library of pre-written snippets that you can go. Some of them are things like storing credentials for Stripe or reCAPTCHA or things like that. There's endpoint snippets for pulling in a Stripe payment form, which if anybody's tried to be able to take a payment in your FileMaker database with Stripe, it has to be done in a web viewer, and you have to pull in a hosted form into a web viewer. So this is a snippet that does that for you. We're working on a snippet that allows you to upload files to your host. We're still kind of working on the packaging and how to deliver that stuff. Most of them will require the Pro version, only because the Pro version includes importing and exporting of snippets. So, I mean, we got to give you some incentive to help us out and support us a little. So, that being said, come on, you could really download it, tear it apart, and copy and paste the code if you were inclined to do so. So, yeah, I'm sure we're smart. We can figure out ways around it, but we ask you to support us, please. we're going to be exploring OData, which I have not even begun to do, but it's been kind of on my to-do list. Like, okay, I got to start looking into using OData. So we're still a ways away from that. And then, of course, one of the next things that we're going to be looking at is AI integration and actually providing access to AI right within the Snippet plugin. I will say, don't expect this stuff tomorrow, but this is the kind of stuff that we're envisioning for the future of the plugin. So that concludes my presentation. I just looked at the time and we're like a minute over at this point. So I guess thanks. I don't know if we have time to just answer a question or two if anybody has held back until the end for questions.
Okay. I was curious about the security. You know,
Okay.
Get this code from AI and it's got this code, but when I've written PHP code for the client or the server, there's all of these, how do I capture this? How do I secure this?
Yeah.
How do
And
I make sure it's cleaning all of the data, you know, yeah.
One of the nice things about if you're working with AI and you tell it that you're working in a WordPress environment, I have found that AI is applying, the vast majority of the security standards, and the other best practices and things like that. But that being said, it is an important concern that we need to pay attention to. So when we're working in AI, it's nice that we can just plug in a prompt and it gives us back some code and we plug it in and it works. Really review your code, and check and see what's happening. Ask AI to, give you an evaluation of how secure is this code that you just gave me, things like that. So yeah, there's definitely concerns involved with that, we put a lot of into error handling. One of the things that could have been on what's coming next for CWP snippets, we'll be looking into evaluating the code and telling you if you need to, like, oh, you're doing something here that's bad for security. So we're actually going to be working on some ways to examine the code as you save it and maybe give you some recommendations and let you know. So hopefully that'll be coming soon as well. All right. Anything else? Brian, was there anything is anybody left in the Zoom meeting?
Oh, yeah. Several. But everybody said it was a good presentation.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to end it right there so you guys can go to lunch. Thank you. I appreciate you attending and enjoy the rest of the conference.